CRE test. So it basically shows.
Good evening. I'm Martijn Andrea, and today I chair the Planning Committee, which consists of 9 elected borough councillors, supported by a range of professional officers. It's the committee's responsibility to determine a planning application using current national and local planning policies and other relevant planning considerations. We only have one item today on the agenda. Firstly, the planning officer will present the application, and then only those speakers who have registered to speak will be invited to address the committee with a strict time limit of 3 minutes. Once the presentations have been made, the committee will discuss and debate the application, seeking clarification from the council's professional planning officers where necessary. We can only focus on the proposals before us and can only take into account what are considered material planning considerations. We welcome members from the public to attend these meetings. I would like to point out that members of the public, either supporters or objectors to the application, are not permitted to address the committee outside of the allocated public speaking sections for each item or ask questions, interject or clap during the meeting. Planning proposals can often generate strong opinions for both for and against the development, but committee business needs to be conducted in a professional and orderly manner without interruption from the public gallery. As a chair, if there is a disturbance from the public gallery, in accordance with point 5.25 of the Council's constitutions, I have the discretion, if needed, to take a number of steps, which include removal of individuals from the meeting and clear parts of the gallery. Thank you. Then we go to apologies. Carol Jewell we have one apology. Then we go to the minutes of the previous meeting. Is everybody happy with the minutes? Can I just a quick raise of hands? Yeah. Thank you. Anybody against? Abstaining? Okay. Thank you, Mike. That's okay. Any declaration of interests? There's no applications deferred or withdrawn. Well, there's one withdrawn that we already know about, which was the Liberty House. And then we'll move to item 243125, which is the Thamesfield Retirement Village in Remenham. And I hand over to Ben.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening all. This is a planning application 243125 to Thamesfield, the retirement village or integrated retirement community within Remenham. This is a full planning application for the proposed part demolition of the existing building and replacement with a 3-story extension to provide extra care units within the IRC, contributing to Thamesfield's overarching aims of redevelopment of the site. In particular, this development that we see here before members today is the total renovation and total redevelopment of the northern wing of Thamesfield. So turning to site context, the location and block plan are shown on the screen now. The site itself lies within the designated countryside. However, the application site sits in the context of built form, as is evident from the submitted location plan. On top of this, the site also sits within the Metropolitan Greenbelt, within the Remenham Bridge Conservation Area, as well as the Henley-on-Thames Conservation Area. The proposal's relationship with built form is clearly shown in the aerial imagery. The site is annotated within blue and it is wrapped in red with the blue line extent down to the River Thames. The site itself has seen historic evolution from original inception, late 1900s extension, late 19th century extension rather, and further extensions over time, with the most recent formally being the new wings at 1993. Recent extensions have occurred within the 2000s, however these have been smaller in scale and not quite so significant. So bolstering the site's rather unique character is the fact that it blends a variety of different architectural styles as the contextual elevations show. The original manor, Thamesfield Manor, is shown on the top left-hand side of your screen to the far right, with the late 19th century wing extension being shown to the top left-hand side of your screen. We can see the 90s extensions to the top right-hand side, and the proposed redevelopment will mirror the scale and the overall bulk and position to create a court-style development within the Thamesfield grounds. The site is also, in part, perceived from public views. So the view to the bottom left-hand side of your screen, you will see Thames side. Now this is circa 150 meters away from the site, across the River Thames. And this image is as true as you can get because it's during the winter months, so there is no screening present. The existing site itself and the part of the building to be demolished are the existing single-story forms and the 7.3 meter dome-style structure. These are all 1993 extensions of Thamesfield. They're to be replaced with a 2.5-story form over 3 floors, including the renovation of the existing basement. And as you can see from the proposed block plan here, this largely replicates the built form to create a court-style courtyard, which is again part of the redevelopment proposed. Turning to the proposed floor and roof plans, you'll see, I think it's a good opportunity to speak about sustainability. So the submitted energy statement clarifies that 78% of carbon savings, or as conditioned, a minimum of 75% above PAR-L regulations have been secured by planning condition. This is a highly futuristic and energy efficient development, which is 7.5 times the policy requirement as expressed in the MDD. Absolutely every apartment put forward, they are in excess of, or at the very least, meeting nationally described minimum space standards. These are not your standard extra care units. They are not bed sits. They are very much fully functioning apartments of multiple bedrooms and mixes, as we can see here. This contributes to Thamesfield's overarching aim of providing rental accommodation on site to support its overall viability and vitality. Turning to the proposed elevations, the elevations are true to their character. They are contemporary design. However, whilst there is so much variety on site and so much very vernacular, it is clear that pastiching, to put it quite literally, this part of the site, as has been seen with later extensions of Thamesfield, they haven't always worked out necessarily to form historical merit, or in this case, to form character merit. So as such, the applicants put forward a contemporary design, which again is true to its form, which supports the varied vernacular on site, and again, complements this highly futuristic, yet contemporary and acceptable design influenced by the material palettes within the wider conservation area. The east and west elevations are shown here, which provides a nice contextual view of what we could be seeing on site. Now, as you can see from the bottom of your screen, it shows that the southern wing, which is the 90s extension, or yes, the 90s wing constructed, the proposed development is very much similar in its scale. Now, oblique views would be visible from the roof form of the existing, the extended mansion house from Thameside, but then again, from Wargrave Road, these views spanning past this point are not a great deal more further afield. Therefore, any change is very much localized, bar the oblique views from the other side of the Thames. However, as this AVR shows, which is an actual visual representation of the site, it shows that in the spring months, this is not during full bloom, as we can see. There's vegetation that's missing that would be otherwise present in summer, as we've seen from historic aerials and street views, etc. The overall development would not be largely stark in its landscape. The proposed development would not detract away from what is frankly a landmark site. The principal frontage is not amending. The traditional roof form adopted blends in positively with the existing roofscape of Thamesfield, and therefore the overarching character impacts, or in this case impacts to the conservation area cited by WBC Built Heritage, are limited to moderate, less substantial at the absolute most of the sliding scale. Before we move on to the recommendation, just a quick update from members. You were circulated this morning with an update of the supplementary agenda, just to discuss a few matters pertaining to the heritage implications and considerations on the site, which just purely reflects good practice. So paragraphs 5.9 and 5.10, they've been amended to clarify that in line with established case law and footnote 7 of the NPPF, heritage policies must be first applied in isolation. Officers have weighed the less than substantial harm under paragraph 215 against the public benefits, which was previously expressed within the report, but bolstered to be explicit in our considerations, and found no clear reason for refusal, which is a requirement of footnote 7. Accordingly, the tilted balance under paragraph 11D, II, has been applied as outlined within the committee report. The Council's statutory duty under Section 72 to preserve the conservation area has also been fully considered, and that is reflected with an updated 17.8, which was sent through this morning. So moving on finally, the officer's recommendation today is to grant planning permission subject to the conditions and informatives listed within Appendix 1 of the committee report. The completion of an associated Section 106 legal agreement and the heads of terms are listed within the recommendation section of the committee report. Or alternatively, to authorize refusal of permission in the event that the Section 106 legal agreement has not been completed within a period of 6 months or within an extension otherwise agreed by officers on behalf of the Head of Development Management. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ben. I think maybe I should have asked you guys this first. This morning there was an update paper sent to everybody, and I just want to check, has everybody had the opportunity to read that one, because it came quite late? Or would members like a few minutes to... Would like a few members to read some extra time to read it?
Yes, please.
Suggest a short German chair for 10 minutes, allow members to read it.
Shall I adjourn the meeting by 10 minutes to give everybody an opportunity to read it properly? Thank you. And then we'll go to continue with the rest of the meeting. Thank you. Is everybody had a chance to read it, or you ready to proceed? Okay. Then we'll go. We have.
Chair, sorry, restart the meeting, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Can we start? So we start. We have a written statement from the Remenham Parish Council, which they asked me to read, so I will read that to everybody. Remenham Parish Council is so concerned about this application that it sought expert advice and viewed early relevant planning documents at should end. RPC's written response flagged up concerns about the adverse impact of the proposal upon the conservation area. It is very relevant to note that the Henley Society, Historic England, and the Council's own built heritage officers, who are very well placed to provide expert advice on such matters, have raised similar concerns. Your built heritage officer also goes into great detail in explaining why, in addition to the harm caused to the conservation area and the settings of the number of listed buildings, the proposal would also cause harm to the host building at Thamesfield itself, confirmed by the Council as a non-designated heritage asset. The heritage officer's comments that the proposed development would deviate from the established build height and scale of the site and seek to introduce a divergent form and appearance. The proposed form would undoubtedly be at odds with the extant and remaining form of the site and seek to introduce a greater urban character. The blocky roof form, which is the third story, differs remarkably from all the other existing elements of the site, which, no matter of their age, have sought to reflect the shallow pitch slated roof of the original 19th century building. It is clear in this instance the jarring nature of the architectural form is at odds with the contextual historic significance. The resulting incongruity would be highly notable in the historic context and the relationship to nearby heritage assets. The third story of the proposed element is particularly problematic. The amendments have not sought to address previously identified concerns and, if anything, sought to decrease the quality of the design through a contrived and awkward roof appearance. This is a damning assessment, and no surprise that he concludes permission should be refused due to conflict with heritage policies and the MPPF. For classification, Historic England confirmed that the amendment did not overcome their concerns with the scheme either. All of the different consultees with heritage expertise have objected to the scheme. If heritage was the only concern, it would be sufficient to warrant refusal. Your officer's suggestion that the public benefit of the scheme outweighs the heritage harm is very strongly contested. You be aware that much of the local public will get no benefit whatsoever and only harm as a result of the scheme being built. With regards to the application of greenbelt policies, your officer considers the scheme should be classified as a redevelopment of the site rather than an extension. RPC disagrees. There are 32 references to extension within your officer's own report, including in the title and description of the development. It's entirely reasonable to class the scheme as an extension, and as a result, if the scheme results in a disproportional additional size of the original, not current buildings, then the MPPF advises that it is not appropriate in the greenbelt. It will be 6 times larger than the building on site in 1981. It is clearly disproportional to the original. As a result of the proposals, does not adhere to the MPPF guidance on the greenbelt. RPC is not opposed to the principle of additional accommodation on the site, but the currently proposed design is very poor due to significant adverse effects it will have upon neighbors and the environment, and we therefore strongly encourage you to refuse it. So that was from Remenham. Could I now ask Mr. Meader to, you can go over there if you want. And you have 3 minutes. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. Your officer has confirmed he did not visit the Remenham Row properties before writing the report. If they'd have done so, it's strongly considered they would not have reached the same conclusions. If you visited the Remenham Row properties, you'll know the existing single-storey structure within the application site is not overly apparent above the boundary wall. Figure 1 on page 28 of your report shows this marked in purple. It's accompanied by the comment that existing wing shown to the left to be of comparable height to the proposal. But that comparative wing is set back over 35 metres from the boundary, as opposed to 3 metres in place for the proposal. The overbearing impact will clearly be detrimental. The only question is by how much. Yet the officer says at page 45 of the report that no detrimental overbearing impacts are predicted. You can't reasonably reach that conclusion if you visited Remenham Row. The report suggests that the relationship between the extension and the Remenham Row property should be viewed as front to front in terms of the design guide standards. It's clear when on site that it's a private area. There's no passing traffic or pedestrian flow, and to suggest it should be treated like a typical street frontage ignores the purpose of the standards, which are, and I quote, to maintain privacy and limit sense of enclosure. Their privacy quite clearly can't be maintained if overlooked by 3-storey development in such close proximity. Your officer's report refers to the potential perceived overlooking that might result. Reference to perceived is considered misplaced. The full height living room windows in the first and second floor apartments will offer direct overlooking of the front gardens and windows of Remenham Row. And there's no space to introduce any planting to minimise overlooking, just another example of the poor design. Thamesfield residents will also be significantly harmed. An enclosed walkway will be removed, so some apartments will have less accessibility to the communal facilities, exactly what should be avoided for such accommodation. 9 existing apartment windows will not achieve recommended light standards, with a number of these receiving a reduction of over 40% of light currently received. The residents of flats 9 and 10 will have an outlook of less than 8 metres to the 3-storey structure. Some of these windows being the main outlooks from habitable rooms and not secondary windows as suggested in your report. Separation of at least 15 metres should be achieved, twice as much than is proposed, so a very clear conflict with your own standards. A balance does indeed have to be made, but the substantial harm caused to residential amenity as a result of the poor design, alongside other concerns raised, does significantly outweigh the benefits here. Paragraph 135 of the NPPF advises planning decisions need to achieve a high standard of amenity for both existing and future users. This scheme clearly fails to do so. Your reasons for refusal could cite policies CP3, CP11, TB24, plus the Council's design guide and the NPPF. Hopefully, such a refusal would prompt the applicant to notably amend the scheme.
You've
if they
3 minutes, Andy.
choose to appeal, I'd be very confident in defending that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you. The next speaker is Councillor Catherine Harding, who's online, hopefully. Catherine, you have...
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I thought I was going last, but anyway.
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair and Committee. We've already heard clear and consistent concerns from neighbouring residents and from Remenham Parish Council. I recognise the need for this type of accommodation in the borough, and we're not disputing the principle of development on the site. However, the scheme before us is of an inappropriate size and design, causing unjustified harm both to neighbouring amenity, particularly for residents of Remenham Row, and to the heritage value of the area. Remenham is a special and sensitive location, as I hope members saw during the site visit last week, and its conservation area designation reflects that significance. All heritage-focused consultees have concluded that this proposal would detract from the character and setting of that area. I also note the comments from Wokingham's Trees and Landscapes team, and they highlight that tree cover along the Remenham Row boundary is far less substantial than suggested by the applicant's plans, and have recommended additional medium and large trees to soften views of the significantly enlarged building from a number of vantage points. And I understand the applicant has not incorporated these recommendations. So in summary, while the revised design in front of us makes minor improvements, it still introduces a 3-storey structure in very close proximity to the boundary. its scale and form remain out of keeping with the protected character of the area and fail to safeguard neighbouring amenity. The acknowledged harm could and should be avoided through an alternative design that still delivers additional accommodation, and I therefore cannot support the proposal in its current form. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Could I now ask Mrs. Harrison?
Hello, I'm Jane Harrison, an Associate Director from Stantec's Reading Planning Team. I've been working with Retirement Villages Group, RVG, for 5 years as a planning consultant. RVG manages Thamesfield Retirement Community for its residents, who live in supported independence in a managed complex of self-contained homes with access to a range of amenities, services and support. RVG believes in supporting older people to live active and socially connected lives. Retirement communities have numerous benefits, enabling people to retain agency over their own lives while being part of an active social community with access to the support and care they need as they age. They have been shown to reduce the number and length of hospital stays. They are an answer to loneliness and isolation. They facilitate better use of housing stock by enabling people to downsize, freeing up family homes. Importantly, residents have access to care and support suited to their level of need, provided by a CQC registered agency, so that most people are able to live out their days at Thamesfield with confidence and peace of mind. The proposal replaces an existing single-storey extension, which is an inefficient use of the land and provides an opportunity to address the demonstrable growing need for supported independent living for older people. RVG has already invested significantly in the village, which members will have seen during their site visit last week, with refurbishments of the main block and creation of the new restaurant and lounge spaces. This proposal is the next step in securing the investment needed to safeguard the long-term viability of the Thamesfield community. The proposed development and associated increase in residents will enable RVG to reduce individual service charges, ensuring that Thamesfield is more affordable for its community long term. From the outset, RVG and the consultant team have been conscious of the location of the site in the Greenbelt, heritage sensitivities and of our neighbours. Steps taken to design appropriately for this setting have included arranging massing to avoid harming the openness of the Greenbelt, minimising the visual effects from the surrounding area, and removal of balconies to minimise overlooking. These are reflected in the positive recommendation of the case officer to approve the application subject to conditions in section 106. Thank you for your time, and I hope you can support this application.
Thank you, Jane. Okay, we can now open it up for questions and discussion. Yeah, go ahead, Wayne.
Can I just start? That statement you read out from RPC, where was all that information, where did it come from? Because I haven't seen it. I mean, it's very detailed about all the issues the heritage team, etc., etc., etc. have, but I haven't seen all that information.
I have not seen it either.
Well, how can RPC have it and we don't? It's very, very detailed about this application.
Sorry, can you clarify what bits of it?
Well, most of it, if being honest, all the elements that relate to the heritage officer, etc., 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 and all the points that were made, and all the statements. I've never seen any of this.
Obviously, the situation is, Councillor, that what the chair's read out is effectively what because the parish council have chosen, rather than attend this evening, they've chosen to send in a written statement and ask the chair to read it out because they're not able to attend, essentially in their slot. So that's what they could have spoke to. The information that's on there, I'm probably stepping into territory of the planning officer to an extent, but my understanding in terms of things, for example, where they've mentioned comments from the Henley Society, Historic England, and the council's built heritage officer, etc. They will all be on the planning portal and will have fed into the report, as with any other normal application.
They might be on the portal, but if this planning committee is considering those, they should be in this report, especially as especially the piece around the built heritage officer in this location, a very sensitive location. That information should have been highlighted in this report.
I think yeah, by all means, I was going to say, to be fair, there is a section on built heritage in the report. I've read it quite a few times. I think members need to be mindful with their expectations. I think if every single consultation response was published verbatim as part of the report, you would be receiving 1,000 pages every single committee, and that just isn't practical for it to help you make a decision.
No, but that's one page. That one page could have been in here. It's not 800 pages.
If I may, members, the statement read out is obviously on behalf of Remenham Parish Council, and the content of that statement we do not see, as with any parish reading, making representations on the day of committee. We do not know what they're going to say. They are referring to information and interpretations of information within the public file. The public file, as I say, the sort of, I think it's about 12 or 13 key consultees listed in a 69-page report in front of members. We do not publish every single consultation verbatim in there, knowing that members have access to the public file, the same as Remenham Parish Council. Remenham Parish Council do not have access to any more information than members of the Planning Committee. Thank you.
I don't accept that. I'm sorry. Well, shake your head. I don't accept that, because that information should, especially all the points that were made by the heritage officer, should be in here, because this is a very sensitive area. Knowing the built heritage officer in that area like I do, I was very surprised it even got here this evening. So I would have thought that at the least we should have seen that.
But I've read it it's on the portal, so I have read that.
Yeah, but I haven't read it on the portal. I rely on this.
Okay.
Page 25, 26, 27 contain heritage observations, which again are linked through to a planning balance conclusion section in section 17 of the report. All consultation responses listed in section 1, again, not just heritage, South Oxfordshire, SIL, Historic Environment, Integrated Care Board, Thames Water, Environmental Health, Environment Agency, Drainage, Ecology, Sustainability, Trees and Landscape and Highways are all contained on the public file, along with all plans, documentations, planning statements, which we obviously for practical reasons cannot include in every committee report for members. The report is 69 pages long at the moment. It's a very detailed report.
It's the same with the sunlight and daylight report, right? I mean, we capture the highlights in these reports, but the original reports are on the portal.
I don't need night and daylight reports. I want the point around. I mean, I've got it here, and I've highlighted 3 things in the built heritage, page 31. Point 5, point 5.2, point 5.3. But when I read that in context with what was read out, it's night and day, referring to night and day reports.
With respect, Councillor, the parish council is trying to persuade you of a position. So they're going to couch it in different terms because they're trying to persuade you of an argument. That is the point of it. The officer's report, could I take you to 5.8? Because you're questioning that the consultation response from the council's built heritage officers not been contextualised within the report. And if you go to paragraph 5.8, it expressly talks about WBC's built heritage raising an objection.
Due respect, I've got that listed here, 5.8, but raising an objection and then listening to what was said there, I would have just liked to have seen that report. End of.
It is on the portal. It is not going to become council procedure to start publishing full reports as part of committee reports, because it is unrealistic, and the volume of paper it would create. If there are particular reports that members wish to read on particular aspects, that is why they're placed on the portal for you to read.
Fair enough, we'll move on.
Any questions? Mike.
I was looking at the drawings earlier on and trying to understand the immediacy that the people in Redmond Row currently enjoy. And in particular, I'm concerned about the height of the three-storey extension and its proximity to the boundary wall relative to the height of the existing three-storey facade on the western side, or the western side of the site. And in particular, how that affects, for example, the late evening sun path and the view from the ground floor windows of the Redmond Row houses. With my rather amateurish attempts at geometry, etc., I think currently the residents of Redmond Row probably enjoy a lovely sunny evening till around about 9 o'clock in the evening. The height of this building, its proximity to the boundary, will significantly reduce that, perhaps to as early as up past 6 or 7 o'clock, when the height then begins to shade the sun. So I understand that there are some calculations being done in accordance with BRE, but I'd quite like the officer to reassure me that that's not a problem.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, it's quite important to consider the orientation of the sun when it's setting. So on site, those who attended the site visit, we visualised where north was with the help of Ben's compass conveniently on the day. We saw what due north was, and we see where the sun would rise and where it would set. And there's actually a reduction in built form on the northwestern boundary of Thamesfield, which means that in terms of actual access to sunlight, debatably, it would improve in part from one end. Now, with standard daylight and sunlight, this has been assessed, but in terms of evening sun, which is the subject of Councillor Smith's question, given where the orientation of the sun goes, if you remove built form and you don't replace anything, naturally you will get more light in the evenings. Thank you, sir.
Sorry, but my understanding from the drawings and the built form is closer to the boundary, and therefore it will cut off the sun at a much earlier time in the evening. Well, what am I not understanding?
Sorry, Councillor. Just if we look at the north orientation of where faces due north, and we think about the direction of the sun and where that travels, where the sun sets, for example, or in the evening where the sun is, the location of the built form in respect of evening sun would not have an impact, sir. Purely based on where it sets. Yes, that might be quite useful if we share a plan and just show where north is. Yeah. My laptop might die, but we'll try. Yeah, maybe a point of confusion was where the north orientation was, because I think that the plans are, they're east, the top of the screen, I suppose, was originally east, but I flipped this around to show the northern extent of the building. And if we think about the track of the sun rising in the east and setting over the Thames, essentially, where the proposed demolition of the existing dome is, that is the more northwesternly form. And as this shows, you can see the remnants of it here, which is now proposed to be a community courtyard. Nothing replaces that. So there's an absence of built form where there was previously built form. Now, this is not of an existingly significant scale. This is 7.3 meters. But I think that the point is, sir, that following the track of the sun and where it would set, there was something there before, there is nothing there now. And therefore, in the evenings, there would not be a substantial loss of light or a lack of sunlight in the evenings whatsoever.
Sam, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I've reviewed the office report, the application documents, and the site, and I'm and also what I've heard this evening. And thank you for everyone who's just taken time to speak today. And I have a few concerns, and just thought, that I feel maybe haven't quite been satisfied in the report. I think my key issue is around heritage harm. I feel the report does acknowledge that the proposal causes moderate, less than substantial harm to the Remenham-Henley Bridge conservation area and further harm, albeit at the lower end, to the Henley conservation area and the Thamesfield non-designated heritage asset. Importantly, the report itself states that the scheme is contrary to policy TB24 because it does not conserve or enhance the designated heritage assets. Plus, the NPPF requires us to weigh harms against public benefits, but having considered the evidence, I haven't been convinced that the benefits outweigh the level of heritage harm. So we're just keen to maybe sort of discuss that.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, it's a good point. Just to clarify, I suppose, first of all, what is meant by public benefits? It's well defined in case law and over an absolute plethora of appeal history that a public benefit will not benefit every member of the public. For example, meeting a need which is outlined within our own council local housing needs assessment, that would be a public benefit in itself. A contribution in lieu to housing land supply, that again would be a public benefit. Improvement of facilities on site. There's actually a list of the additional benefits that this would essentially cater for existing residents. So a new residence lounge, arts and crafts room, upgraded kitchen, flood resilience, staff facilities, and a landscape community courtyard that doesn't exist. And I think a good one for the site as well is flood resistance. We are on the Thames, and it's important to account for climate change, which a building, frankly, constructed in the late 1800s does not achieve. So futuristic design is planning for the safe development of the site, the retention of the site, and the long-term viability of the site, which again is a public benefit, conserving form that supports the upkeep of what WBC consider to be a non-designated heritage asset. So an officer's view, and members can come to their own conclusion with the benefits weighed. Our view is that the benefits substantially outweigh the less than substantial harm identified by WBC Built Heritage.
Moses.
Thanks, Chair. Ben, I want to go back to this issue of sunlight and daylight assessment, because we had this conversation on site. I'm just thinking, I think the way the building has been labeled in terms of orientation doesn't align with geographic north. So I would expect that in the money, would the sunlight assessment not impact on Remenham Row if it's three-story building? Because the sun is coming from the east, and Remenham Row is to the west of the new development, the three-story. So how did that pass the sunlight assessment test?
Yes, it did, sir, to be frank. So every single daylight factor, or ASPH, which is the BRE terminology for this, is met within every apartment of Remenham Row. The only breach, I believe, is one window. I do have a note, so I'm not paraphrasing here. Yes, it is one window of flat 9 within the existing site, which features a marginally below maximum guidance or best practice guidance, ASPH, or sunlight to windows, but every single dwelling at Remenham Row passes this test, which is ASPH in accordance with the BRE.
So, yeah, but is the BRA not simplistic, though, for simple ground floor? Is the BRA adequate for three-story building? I thought you have to do something more sophisticated for high-rise buildings, more than single-story.
In my experience, sir, it's more than adequate. So it's the industry best practice guidance is utilised with high-rise developments in London of 16 stories. Is the industry standard, and if this guidance is met, and actually the applicant has gone further into the minimum requirements expressed by the BRE. So rather than just doing VSC, they've done the NSL, which we can explain later. It's a comprehensive assessment in accordance with best practice guidance.
Caroline.
Thank you. Sorry, I might lose my voice. From what I understand, there's various matters we have to take into consideration, like it's in a green belt conservation area and all that. But we have to take into account the public benefits and the tilted balance. So what I'm trying to understand is the public interest and all the other things in favour of a yes as opposed to an opposition? A refusal, because there's quite a lot in there about it being green belt, and I do have concerns about the loss of amenity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So the officer's recommendation is for approval. And just a very important clarification on Greenbelt. There's a fairly comprehensive section within the report which outlined that actually on 2 grounds it is appropriate development in the Greenbelt. So there is a technical conflict with the fact that the 7 exceptions within CP11 aren't met in countryside policies, but again, the general thrust of that policy is put forward. The principal development, this is an existing site in the same use. Officer's view is that the principle is not a concern, it's more than acceptable. The heritage harms, or the less than substantial harm, which we've been quite candid and transparent about that they do exist, directly paraphrasing what Bill Heritage have said. That is something that members will weigh. There's an untitled balance to assess that against public benefits, and officer's view is that it doesn't provide a clear reason for refusal, and as such, the tilted balance is engaged, and a revised planning balance based on that is calculated at the end of the report. So officer's review is yes, Councillor. The recommendation is to approve, but members most certainly are welcome to arrive at their own conclusions.
Members, if it's helpful, in a way, whilst it's quite a different proposal in front of you from, let's say, a major residential scheme, which is sort of dealing with, speculative development in the countryside, contrary to our local plan, but obviously also dealing with a tilted balance and that kind of benefits against harms. In essence, this proposal in front of you, whilst probably slightly more complex in the issues, especially when they relate to heritage, greenbelt, and so on, they in essence boil down to the same kind of balancing act. The considerations, heritage considerations, are obviously slightly more complex than, let's say, spatial, in and out of settlement arguments, and the same applies to the greenbelt. So in a way, the report does need to contain quite a lot of the detail, Councillor Smith, as you were saying, and the kind of competing aspects. The report, as Ben has said, the report kind of openly acknowledges there is harm. The same way we would acknowledge to you as members there is harm from building in the countryside. No development is without harm. And in this case, there will be an impact. Our built heritage officer in the report and on the planning application file has confirmed that harm is less than substantial. So that's kind of where we are with that on our weighing scales. And then obviously the report helpfully identifies those public benefits that Ben has alluded to, in terms of the nature of accommodation, environmental matters, the fact that, if we are resisting housing, whether it be this kind of housing, we need to have substantive reasons to do so, and be sure as a committee, as a council, that, if we do not feel that those benefits are sort of weighty enough to outweigh the harm, we are solid and we are justified in our position. And so obviously officers have presented you with a position, and obviously we're here to answer any questions on that.
Wayne.
For me, when one looks at public benefit and when you consider what you would describe as the public that has spoken this evening, including the Remmingham Parish Council, Henley Society, it's in a conservation area, the Heritage Officer didn't like it, Historic England didn't like it. For me, the balance tilts towards this isn't a suitable location for this development. Is it neighbourly? Well, it's certainly not neighbourly to Remmingham Row, and it's certainly not neighbourly to flats 10, 9, and flank to flank at Thamesfield, because if you read the report, it's half of what the BDG standards are. So, and if you want a great visualization of what it's going to look like, page 30, figure 4, I mean, that is dominant. That, I mean, I understand Mike's point around sunlight, but for me, I mean, if that isn't going to tower over Remmingham Row, I don't know what will. I mean, just look at it. So for me, this is unneighbourly, and considering all the people that have objected to it, and if you were to stand in the street and ask all people in Remmingham and Henley, well, is this in the public interest? I think I know the answer.
Just with that mass and scale, because we had, of course, the Ruscombe on New Road one, but this is, it's not exactly, I mean, I went through that, what the inspector said on that one, and that was more, it was in that area. But in this case, well, I have that argument is slightly different because you already have a big site next to it.
I'm glad you brought that up.
But yeah.
I'm very glad you brought that up. Because if you go to that site in Ruscombe and you look at that in comparison to the bungalows, it's massing, it's dominant. And if you lived in Remmingham Row and you suddenly look out your window and you go, oh, where did that come from? It would be identical to Ruscombe.
But you already have on the
south
side,
you have
already
a walkway.
have that part. I mean, if when I'm in Remmingham,
you might do on one side. You might do on one side, but at the moment they've got a balcony, and it's about 1 metre off the ground because of flooding. You don't have a 3-storey building with a flat roof, which is a lot higher than the existing mansion that was there. That is on the street scene.
But I'm only saying you have it on the south side. You already have a large wing, which is already the same height.
We might do on the south side.
So it's that is slight.
Who's
so that's
the
why I
neighbours?
see it differently.
Who's the neighbours on the south side? Who's the neighbours on the south side? There isn't any. That's my point. Unneighbourly.
I share Councillor Smith's concerns about the mass and the form. I had a slightly different question. On page 56, item 17.8, the start of the paragraph says, in applying significant weight to the provision of specialist housing for old people and a strong contribution to housing supply. This is a net gain of 13 units. So I don't particularly see this as a massively large contribution to the housing supply. But I'm more concerned is that this is, a great deal is made of the fact that this is provision of specialist housing for older people. What's to stop RBG at some later stage deciding that it's not viable? They've already said it's not viable in its present form and it just becomes flats for anybody. Is there anything in this application or is there anything in planning law that stops them doing that somewhere down the line?
I'm not sure that's a...
I'm happy to address that. There is a restricted planning condition, which is recommended, which limits the use class to C2. And I think we need to be cognizant of what the description of development is. It specifies the extra care. Now, you cannot deviate from C2 to C3. There's no permitted development right to do so. And if in an undisclosed amount of years a planning application comes through, there's no difference to somebody putting an application for SHU 10 to turn it into housing. So it is speculative, but conditions secure this consent.
Sorry. Sam.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've heard, some interesting comments around sort of height and potential overbearingness and also greenbelt. I think my sort of thoughts around the greenbelt and sort of harm to openness. I think, looking at this proposal, I think, this proposal would increase height, mass and volume on what is effectively a sensitive riverside site. Even if we did accept it, which is previously developed under the NPPF 154G, the question is, that we have to answer today, I guess, is, whether this scheme causes harm to openness. And in my judgment, based on what we've sort of heard and looked at all the evidence in this document, I feel it does the increased scale and visibility do harm to openness, particularly with regards to the long riverside views. And would this not place the scheme in conflict with the core strategy CP12?
So within the officer report, thank you, Councillor, first to start with that. There is certainly a change noticed, but I think, again, it's important to be aware of what is on site. This isn't a greenfield site. This is not an undeveloped field directly adjacent to the riverbank. It does exist along Wargrave Road. It does. The proposal is viewed in the context of built form. The proposal is subject to land which is occupied by built form as existing. So the qualities of that land, again, with respect to openness, applying significant harm to that in its context, officers would recommend against that, as prescribed within the officer's report. Again, there's nothing to stop members coming up with their own judgment here and assessing that. However, just as a word of warning, just to remember where the site sits, that it is an existing C2 home, it is an IRC, there is built form, it's fully impermeable, there's hard surfacing everywhere, there are large buildings surrounding. It must be viewed in that context and harm calibrated, if any is to be afforded. So.
Wayne, go ahead.
I'm still seeing my weighing scales. Not with you, Ben, unfortunately. 13 houses to me, and the harm on my weighing scales doesn't. And when the person for the application spoke, she said that she's worked with the neighbours. Well, if working with the neighbours has created this, I mean, it's just dominant. There's loads of things, and I can't suggest tonight what they should have done, but there is ways of you could have made this a lot more pleasing to not only the eye and to our heritage officer and to residents of Remmingham Row. I really do.
Thank you, Councillor. Again, just to be consistent with recent appeal decisions and the Council's view on housing provision, we've had schemes far smaller in terms of provision and significant weight has been afforded to that provision. It is a consistent approach by the Council of affording that amount of weight because our housing land supply is in such a deficit at current. We have the twin benefit of providing, again, what our Council prescribes as an urgent need, what national policy describes as a pressing need for elder people's accommodation, in particular these RRCs, which again has a potential to free up housing stock. That has a twin benefit, and consistently significant weight has been applied by the local planning authority for these two matters. With respect to the scale proposed, again, this has been through intensive revisions, and to achieve almost 80% carbon savings, to achieve a flood resilient development, a development needs to be of a certain scale. Otherwise, you'll be in exactly the same situation, and you'll be putting residents at risk, which is not something officers or the Environment Agency are prepared to do. So the built form is subject to a highly sustainable development, a climate change resilient development, and this is what appears.
We will agree to differ.
Oh, Moses, go ahead. Sorry.
Chair. So, talking about benefit versus harm, and listening to the developer's rep, I want to ask, is this development driven by need or by commercial viability?
Thank you, Councillor. It's not really for the committee to consider that. Frankly, our role is to determine an application put forward in front of us and assess the positives against the negatives as we've done. I'm afraid I have nothing greater to add in that situation, but thank you, Councillor.
I'll add to it, if that's okay, Chair, just to say that the motives of an applicant are not a material planning consideration.
Okay, I have one more question, maybe before. This is about this, maybe, Ben, could you explain to us a bit more about this BREEAM section? Yeah, you know, you mentioned this BREEAM, B-R-E-A-M.
With respect to energy efficiency,
yes.
Overall, yes.
Explain a little bit more.
Yes, absolutely. So it's more energy efficiency as a whole, or carbon savings. So the applicant has adopted numerous best practice techniques. It was actually highly commended by WBC's former sustainability officer. I do have some notes as to what's proposed. The 7.5 times % the policy requirement for carbon saving, that isn't above a fixed baseline of nothing. This is above building regs minimum requirements. It should be noted as well that this has increased over recent years to already be about circa 30%. So you're looking at a highly sustainable development. This is achieved through a highly efficient built fabric, glazing, excess insulation, which again, in part informs the height of the building. There's no way of avoiding that for a highly energy efficient scheme. There's ventilation using MVHR, so that's your mechanical ventilation and your heat recovery systems, exhaust air heat pumps, and these recycle energy from warm air leaving the home and keep air fresh within the site to the benefit of the residents. The use of photovoltaic panels, natural cooling by a green roof, and again glazing types as well. And again, on the same but slightly different topic is the decrease in impermeable area, which again makes the site as a whole more flood resilient. So overall, it's a highly sustainable scheme and in vast excess of best practice guidance. Thank you.
Mike.
Just to make an observation on that, my understanding from the advertising available to the to the public, you know, the lease price is going to be inclusive of all service charges, all utilities, etc. So it makes perfect sense for the developer to make the building as efficient as possible. If they weren't inclusive, they probably wouldn't do so. But I'm not sure that substantially makes amends for the significant visual harm I think the north facade is going to be. If the top floor was set back a bit in some way, I think it would be far less harmful in its aspect. But at the moment, it just looks like a huge cliff edge.
Sam, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think from my side, I think having considered so everything sort of presented today, I think, you know, and going through this document in detail, I think considering the scale and sensitivity of the Riverside heritage setting, I haven't been persuaded that, you know, the public benefits of this scheme outweigh the level of harm identified. So I think, you know, particularly, I think my issue here is with regards to the heritage harm caused by this development, and I think on that basis, I would be like proposing a refusal this evening.
Okay.
Sorry, Councillor, just to confirm that the heritage harm is quite a wide spectrum. Are you applying harm to the conservation area, which conservation area, and non-designated heritage assets, if so, which, or all of the above? All the above? Okay, thank you. Just from my assessment, which non-designated heritage asset? Sorry, Councillor, that was a question. Which non-designated heritage asset is impacted by the development?
Yeah, from my side, so all of the above.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor. Thamesfield, for example, is a non-designated heritage asset. Is it just Thamesfield you focus the harm on, or is there others as well?
Yeah, Thamesfield.
Thamesfield. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
So just for my clarification, Sam, so the WBC Built Heritage says that there is harm, but it is less than substantial harm or moderate to limited harm. In your case, you disagree with our own expert advisor. Okay.
Sorry, Chair. If we're getting into the stage where councillors are putting forward reasons for refusal, I'll go through my, I say usual, it's the first time I had to roll out preamble in terms of overturning officer recommendations. You are, as I think my planning colleagues are trying to get to, you are required to give reasons for your decisions in planning. Where you are following an officer's recommendation, that's usually straightforward, as they'll be detailed in the report. However, when you're overturning an officer decision, it's particularly key. If not, it's an easy judicial review, or if you're approving, or you run the potential of costs on appeal, as you can't defend appeals properly without good reasons. The correct level of detail of what is required in those reasons remains in case law, and it's from a case of South Bucks and Porter, and I'm going to bore you terribly with a quote from it, just so you understand. It is, to be fair to the judiciary, this one's in not bad plain English for once. The reasons for a decision must be intelligible and they must be adequate. They must enable the reader to understand why the matter was decided as it was and what conclusions were reached on the principal important controversial issues, disclosing how any issue of law or fact was resolved. Reasons can be briefly stated, the degree of particularity required depending entirely on the nature of the issues falling for decision. In other words, the more complex your reasoning needs to be. It must not give rise to substantial doubt as to whether the decision maker erred in law by misunderstanding some relevant policy or some other important matter, or by failing to reach a rational decision on relevant grounds. So the reasons need to refer only to the main issues in dispute, not every material consideration, but they should enable disappointed developers to assess their prospects of obtaining some alternative permission or unsuccessful opponents to understand how the policy or approach underlying the grant of permission may impact future developments. Basically, overall, that requires anyone reading your decision to understand where you've come to on key points. I'd say here, where we're sat at the moment, appears to be, and again, I'm in danger of straying into my planning colleagues' territory, is we're sat in and around MPPF paragraph 215, and the question of how much harm, heritage harm, are you saying is being afforded to the conservation area? In other words, are you agreeing with the council's officers, the council's heritage officers, that it's, I'm going to say less substantial and hope that's still the correct language. I'm sure my colleagues will correct me in a second if I'm still quoting the old MPPF on that. And then moving on to balancing that against the public benefits and the weight that you are affording to the harm on the heritage, and then I'd say the weight that you're affording to the public benefits as to how you are potentially arriving to a different decision to the officer. In other words, what public benefits are you giving less weight, what heritage harm are you giving more weight, etc. And I think what that'll do is that'll allow the council to have a defensible reason, unless there's anything else my planning colleagues wish to add.
Or maybe we can also maybe check on the things that maybe are not challenged, because not everything is challenged, I think. I don't know if that might be good to go through that, some of those aspects that the council says.
And of course, once we get, sorry Chair, once we get to a point of having those reasons, you will of course need a seconder, which we haven't got as yet, as far as I'm aware.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Craig. Just to sort of jump in on two kind of, let's say, two matters which Councillor Akhtar has raised. with regard to concern. The first being openness of the green belt, and the second, very distinctly different matter, being the harm to heritage assets, whether on one hand that is harm to the conservation area, on the other hand harm to non-designated heritage assets, which include Thamesfield itself. Up to this point, the committee has not necessarily identified or outlined any harm to Thamesfield. The focus has been on amenity, scale, bulk, visual impact of the development on the immediate area, and that's broken into obviously your character and appearance, greenbelt, and obviously imagine it wasn't greenbelt, it would still have a visual impact on the character of the area. And then you've got a separate residential amenity argument which splits off from that, which we've talked about at Remenham Row, which is not to do with necessarily character, because we're talking about daylight, sunlight, and we're talking about sunrise, sunset, we're talking about windows and orientation. So again, there is probably 3 or 4 issues that have sort of been bundled together, so as to speak, which need to be picked apart first, and it might be helpful if we start from heritage assets. We can't just grab them all and throw them in a reason for reason because we don't know what we're specifying. Are we talking about Thamesfield itself, the architectural integrity, or are we talking about the conservation area and views from Remenham and Henley conservation area into the site? Conservation area and non-designated heritage assets, again, is a branch there which need to be isolated and discussed as a committee before we're able as officers to assist with a kind of, and repeat back to you the reason for refusal that you are seeking to impose.
Moses, are you talking about built heritage here, or are you talking about something else? Do we want to talk about built heritage first and then come back to you, Moses? Because I'm happy to go, but Sam, you know, built heritage, I'm also a little bit unclear. I know we've seen the our own built heritage says there's less than substantial harm. You don't agree with that one, which is fair, but can you help us understand where you see those harms differently?
Yeah, I think sort of I think sort of just the officers report, you know, what you mentioned just now. I think it would be going down the branch of the sort of built environment side within that piece, and the sort of the harm to the conservation area. That would be the branch within that would be looking to take this down.
But do you see harm to the original building itself?
Yes. Yeah.
More than it is now? Or, okay. In what way?
Yeah, based on the height.
Sorry, Chair. Just one thing. Sorry, Councillor. The original building being the original mansion house, including the extensions, including the modern extensions, or including the 1800s extensions? Sorry, sorry, which? Sorry, Councillor. So the original mansion house was on the far right of the image that I showed you. It was extended in the late 1800s, the white building that faces the river. Is that the part that we're alleging harm on, or are we including the later extensions as well?
Because you have the old building.
The main building, okay, fine.
The main building.
Including the 1800s extension that forms the river frontage, correct? Thank you.
And let's just stick on this topic, Moses. I haven't forgotten about you, but Catherine, you're...
Well, just on that, the effect on the actual building itself, I don't really see that this, it's just been added onto and added onto and added onto for forever. Yes, it's, for a long time it kept its sort of white Victorian building character, but then they went and put this extension at the back. It's another of those. I mean, I don't see that is substantial harm to the Victorian building. That's just
I
my
share Catherine.
personal opinion. Yes, it is a new modern building, but we've already had extension and extension and extension, different styles.
Thank you, Catherine. The spectrum of harm is probably not for us as officers or as the committee to determine beyond the advice we were given by our heritage officer. And our heritage officer has identified it would be less than substantial. And if the committee agree with that position, which is presented in your report, then the question is, would the identified public benefits outweigh that as required by the MPPF? So again, we're not in a position, I haven't heard evidence to confirm that the heritage officer's got it wrong, and it's not less than substantial harm, it's actually something else. Assuming that the committee is in agreement with the heritage officer and the position placed in the report, then as Craig has helpfully identified earlier, it would be up to the committee to work out whether it agrees that the benefits on the other side of the scales are to be afforded the weight they have been afforded to you. And if, as Councillor Smith has eloquently put, 13, equivalent of 13 houses is not considered by the committee to be substantial in terms of its contribution to housing and land supply, and the nature of the development is, in the view of committee, not to be given as much weight, then that's what needs to be outlined clearly by members. And then that shifting of the balance then brings you into a different conclusion.
Is that what, Sam, are you in agreement with the built heritage officer that it is less than substantial harm except you don't, if the balance, or are you in disagreement with the WBC officer? I wasn't clear on that one.
Yes, what I'm saying is that the proposal would result in moderate, less than substantial harm. Yes.
You're agreeing with that one, except the way you weigh it is slightly different. Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. Yeah. I also agree with the built heritage officer. I think, it does create some harm, but it's, if you look at it from some of the sides, it is already there, and it is behind the white building. It's not, I agree with there is some harm, but...
I think it's, as Brian has said, you need to put it in the round. If you were just looking at one element of the conservation area, as you say, it's not an asset, but it's in a very special Henley Bridge conservation area. So it's the impact on that. You then include the other stuff that Brian mentioned, which is not a branch of conservation, but it's a branch of a further element, and you could relate CP11, CP12, and that's when you consider the street scene, well, in this case, the side scene on Remingham Row, built, massing, unneighbourly, that combined with the conservation bit, for me, outweighs, it goes against the public benefit, because 13 houses is 1.4% of our housing requirement every year. We need to build in around round numbers 870 a year. This is 1.4%. So you get that tilted balance, and for me, personally, you look at that tilted balance and you go, what's on this side? What's the benefit on this side? And I can't see this building up to say, in my view, it tilts towards acceptable development, considering what we've heard this evening from various, well, I say heard this evening, you know, some of the information that was read out this evening, plus the stuff that's in here, plus what we've heard from residents.
Just to be clear, Councillor, I just want to pick up some language used there in terms of you talk about a tilted balance. When we're balancing heritage and public benefits, it's untilted. It's a flat balance. Just to be clear, because people have been judicially reviewed and lost over getting their tilted and untilteds mixed up. So I just want to.
Perhaps we shouldn't use it at all then.
That'd be a matter for government, I'm afraid.
Okay, I'm not there yet, but you guys...
Well, to continue that, and what Brian was saying, should we perhaps take into consideration the possibility that Thamesfield will become unsustainable and we'll actually lose accommodation? Because that would add to the 13.
So that's not what's presented in front of you, but obviously, what, as I think Mike mentioned earlier, I think it was Mike, apologies if it wasn't, the proposal is to obviously improve facilities there. No one around this committee knows what may happen in future if such facilities are not forthcoming. That's entirely up to the committee to consider in the back of their mind in any decision making, but it's not a justification necessarily.
You want to, Moses, have you anything? I stopped you earlier in your tracks. Is that okay still? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I just wanted to say that I spoke about the sunlight and daylight assessment. I've read the report, and I'm reasonably satisfied that that's not an issue.
Okay, so I'm looking around now. I'm still... I can hear Sam's and Wayne's comments, and also Mike's. Or Mike, you want to add some things to it?
Yeah, I'm looking at paragraph 5.6 on page 33, where it states what paragraph 215 of the MPF states, and it does say that the MPF seeks to balance harms against the benefit of the proposal. And I'm then also looking at 5.8, where the top line says WBC Built Heritage raised an objection. And that in their view, the proposal would result in harm, less than substantial harm to the Redmond Bridge conservation, would also alter and harm the setting of a number of identified non-designated heritage assets, and also lower end of the scale. So our officer has identified there is harm, and we're supposed to be balancing the harm against the benefits. And as Councillor Wayne Smith has said, a net gain of 13 units at 1.4% of the identified need for this type of accommodation is a relatively small contribution versus the harms that seem to be occurring to the various different heritage aspects of this. And also there is, as Councillor Smith has said, you know, there's also the built mass and there's also the visual impact. I think the harms do seem to weigh out more than the net benefit of 13 more units.
So if I have to capture your thoughts and paraphrase you guys, it's the... even though we agree with the built heritage that there is less than substantial harm, we don't, well, okay, or moderate limited harms, or whatever, yeah. We think that does not, or that outweighs the public benefits from having those 13 houses, dwellings in a care home, providing care for residents, for future residents. Go ahead.
You're missing. Yeah, you are. You are missing the points that Councillor Mike Smith has just reiterated on the back of my points. You know, in isolation, you've taken one out. We added a lot more.
Yeah, and so that was the one, and then the second one is the overbearing, unneighborly. Could you speak to
So, you've got bulk, you've got scale, you've got mass, you've got unneighborly. Unneighborly. So you've got 4 there, and I'm very aware that if this goes to appeal, that there needs to be, you know, they need to be detailed, but there are others, and I know what you're saying about the balancing scales, but you then include some of the points on heritage and the conservation area. Noted that this isn't an asset, but it's the impact on the Henley Bridge conservation area. But it's not in isolation. It's the other bits that make, it goes back to the scales, it goes back to the public harm, it goes back to the 13, etc.
Sorry, Councillor, just a few things. Reference was made there to the Henley Bridge Conservation Area. The WBC Heritage Officers only recommended that there's limited, less than substantial harm to the Henley on Thames Conservation Area. The Remenham Bridge Conservation Area is where there is moderate. So just careful in which we apply this to.
Yeah, no, I was just paraphrasing.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, of course. So it's all of above.
Yes.
And I was just referring to what Sam Akhtar said.
And there is just one more thing. I think reference been made to the fact that the only public benefit is 13 dwellings, just so this can be minuted, just to ensure that within the planning balance, the full suite of public benefits are listed. I think we're falling back on the fact that there's only 13 houses, that there is a significant suite of public benefits. I'd urge members to potentially just take a moment just to read that section of the planning balance as updated, just so we fully consider what the public benefits are. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Smith. So if we just refer to the updated planning balance within the update to the supplementary, that will clarify. So there are both balances in there. There's the untitled balance, which is arising from paragraph 215. And there's also the overall planning balance within paragraph 17.8 and 17.9, just to ensure that those are considered prior to coming to an arrangement. Thank you.
But in 17.9, it does state a strong contribution to the housing land supply. It's not strong.
On what basis, Councillor Smith?
We need to build 870 houses a year in this borough. What's 13 going to do?
Contribute towards the demonstrable need.
13. Yeah, but as I said, it's 1.4%. So it's not strong.
No,
Work on maths. If it was 80%, I would say it was strong, or 70%. I might even give you 60%, not 1.4%.
But I do notice, you know, many small ones make a big one. This is part of that one.
If the language said a contribution, I would accept it, but I don't accept the word strong.
Just to kind of draw members' attention, paragraph 73 of the NPPF specifically references small and medium-sized sites, and it states, and I will quote, "Small and medium-sized sites can make an important contribution to meeting the housing requirements of an area." It may, Councillor Smith, not be strong, but important, and in the context of the council's housing land supply, which is only at 50% of the level it needs to be, small and medium-sized sites can make an important contribution. So again, officers have presented that position, and whether members disagree with the word strong or wish to replace it with important, multiple small and medium-sized sites do add up. and obviously relieve pressure through windfall development.
Sorry, Mike, I'm a bit struggling in this setup. Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, just to clarify, I thought we were looking at this application against the current housing requirement, which is not 870, it's 1,300 and something per year. No?
Not yet. Not yet.
We're in that transition period, Mike.
Not yet.
I thought it applied to new planning applications.
No, we're in the new transition period, you know, as we go through, because we got on the back of the old. So we kept the old number. We didn't. As long as this goes through, we keep the old number, not the new number, for about another 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
But our land supply is limited. I mean, you know.
Whilst the local plan has been assessed on the old number, until that local plan is approved, following the introduction of the new MPPF, that we had to compare against the new number. But perhaps I've got that wrong.
I think that is okay. I'm not sure that. Yeah, I think we are a bit on, but I mean that is reflected in our current 5-year land supply, which is only 1.2 at the moment, or 1.7 or something. So that is taken into that account that we have. It's about. From that point of view, we're not in a good position, and I think, you know, that from that point of view, we asked that the tilted balance is engaged, and we need to in favor of a development that has significant harm. And although I recognize some of those ports are,
Again, Chair,
I don't know if
sorry,
we are significant harm on this.
Sorry, Chair, I don't mean to cut across, but just to come back to, there's a lot of that tilted balance keeps. I just want to keep coming back to when it comes to 215 and you're balancing heritage harm against public benefits. It is untilted. It is a flat balance. I just have to keep saying that. Yeah, then the next phase, if you get past that stage, I accept. But I thought we were still on the discussion about heritage harm at this point. If I've misunderstood that, apologies. But
Anybody else? Stuart, you've been a bit quiet. Any comments on this one? Moses?
Okay. I just want to ask you this. Would this development be considered significant benefits? This 3 additional 13, would they be considered significant benefits in planning?
So the package of benefits in combination most definitely equates to significant weight, yes, which is the combination of factors outlined within the later paragraphs of the committee report.
Normally, any houses that will be given significant weight, and also for care homes, normally these things carry significant weight in that one. So. Based on our own experiences with the appeals, I'm only saying. So, Sam, do you want to make a proposal against it? Is that what? Can we, and then based on, maybe Wayne, can you summarize that proposal for us? We're going to go for.
Are we going on the back of Sam's proposal? What?
well, at the moment you have a proposer. You need a seconder. I would suggest very strongly that you probably at the very least ought to be refreshing people's minds as to what the exact reasons are for the reasons for refusal. Because I'm personally not sure I understand them at this stage, and so if I'm not, I suspect there's probably a large portion of the committee might also be struggling with me. So I think probably that would be step one. I think is there someone that wishes to second it? Can we then have some sort of summary as to the reasons for refusal and make sure that they are defensible, and then obviously you'd move to the vote. I think that's the stage you found yourself at, Chair, if it helps.
Yeah, that helps. That's what I was.
Before we go into sort of proposing anything, I mean, just want to put it to officers. Are we saying that actually, because I think we've heard there's a number of issues with this development, right? Issues around bulk. I think we have from Councillor Wayne-Smith around bulk, issues with scale, mass, unneighbourly. Again, the issues with heritage. So if we're, you know, if we've got these multiple issues, how should we wrap this up in a way? Because I think there's an issue with just saying heritage.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Actic. If I could just try and repeat back what I've heard there. What you've just mentioned, I believe, in terms of bulk, scale, height, are we specifically talking about the proximity to the neighbouring dwellings at Remenham Row in that regard? Just yeah, yes or no would be really good. Okay, so we're talking about bulk, scale, height, proximity to the dwellings at Remenham Row. That is an amenity reason for refusal. We're talking about residential amenity. Are we talking about overlooking and perceived loss of privacy or not? Understood, Councillor Smith. So in terms of
One's character-based.
yeah, so one is character-based,
And impact on the Remenham conservation area as well,
which is heritage, a heritage reason for refusal, which, as Craig has outlined, indicates that members do consider that the harm, impact on the Remenham Henley Conservation Area, is not outweighed by the public benefits. Which gives a clear reason for refusal on footnote 7. So therefore, there isn't a tilted balance engaged because footnote 7 of the NPPF doesn't allow that if there is a clear reason for refusal. And the public benefits that have been considered are housing land supply in terms of the contribution this site makes, or in members' views, the limited contribution this site makes. Beyond housing land supply and the contribution this site makes, we haven't necessarily debated the other aspects which have been included in the report, which members would need to confirm they either agree are benefits at the kind of level provided or come to a counter view before we sort of firm up that reason for refusal.
Okay, I mean, I can capture them. I'm not saying, you know, so the guys need to have an opinion about it, but we're having a modest contribution to the housing land supply. It's a sustainable location. We're utilizing previously developed land. And it contributes to the need for additional specialist older persons accommodation, which was given substantial weight, for example, in Ruskin. So those are benefits that I see, but how do the rest of the committee see them? Are they not outweighing the heritage part?
You've only named one. You've only named one of any significance, and that's the Old People's one. So why then did we refuse Ruskin? I appreciate we can't go into other applications, and we can't, but
You can learn from the... No, I think you can learn from those appeals, you know, and I think that's what I think you're right to raise that one. So, but also recognize the slight differences, yeah, between the two sides. It's not a like for like,
No.
unfortunately, that would have made it.
Slight is good.
Hmm?
Slight is good.
Sorry, councillors, just in terms of this harm, especially in terms of heritage and conservation area, we've talked about scale, we've talked about height, obviously it's visibility. As far as officers are aware, we haven't talked about its design or its contemporary nature of its design, and therefore we are keeping the reason for refusal, should members move that way, to scale and height, bulk, massing.
Because I think design is subjective. You might like it, I might not. Old and new.
Councillors, just to bring you back now to where I think we are, and I do need councillors that are proposing the motion to obviously confirm this, please. We have, as far as officers interpret this, we have 2 reasons for refusal, in addition to a standard Section 106 reason, which we'd need to include.
I've got those, yeah.
The first reason for refusal then would be harm to the conservation area. And this would be due to its scale, height, bulk and massing. It's therefore failing to preserve the conservation area, the Remenham and Henley Bridge conservation areas. Members have agreed that the development would result in limited to moderate, less than the substantial harm as set out in the committee report. Members are not attributing more harm than the report presents and the council's built heritage officer. And therefore, when applying the MPPF, in particular paragraph 215, the identified harm is not outweighed by the public benefits of the proposal, and that is a flat balance, because the MPPF and footnote 7 just requires us to assess whether there is a strong reason for refusal. Members are of the view that there is a strong reason for refusal. Accordingly, proposal conflicts with relevant parts of the Town and Country Planning Listed Building Conservation Area Act and CP3, TB24 of the MDD, would be our heritage policies, is that?
224.
TB24. 224, hang on.
224.
Yeah, TB24, sorry, yeah, sorry. And then, in terms of amenity, and again, I'll present this for members to clarify, we're talking about the proposal's bulk, scale and height and proximity to Remenham Row. And this would result in an unacceptable impact on amenity, together with an unneighbourly overbearing impact. We're not talking about privacy and overlooking. We're talking about the unneighbourliness of the development from its bulk and scale.
No, I think we, well, no, I say I don't think, I think we are, by the fact that those windows are all facing, looking at those residents in Remmingham Row. And I appreciate that the balconies have been removed, but they've still got Juliet balconies. I mean, all right, they might not be able to walk out on them, but they're going to have French doors overlooking down on Remmingham Row.
So a single reason for refusal covering bulk scale height, the unneighbourliness, and unacceptable level of overlooking and loss of privacy to those properties, contrary to Council's local plan, Borough Design Guide, etc., MPPF. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we've sort of got captured the wording that Sam and I think Wayne were discussing. We will read them back to you. Then we need, Sam, if that is indeed your proposal, you need to find a seconder, and then we'll have a vote on that one, if that's okay. Yeah? Is that clear? No.
So yeah, to recap, members, first reason is proposed development by reason of its scale, height, bulk and massing would fail to preserve or enhance the character or appearance of the Remenham Henley Bridge Conservation Area, as discussed, result in limited, moderate, less than substantial harm to the significance of these heritage assets. When applying paragraph 215 of the MPPF, identified harm is not outweighed by public benefits.
Sorry, we need to change this.
Mike, go ahead.
I think it needs to be clear that it's the accumulation of harms, not just one harm. It's the accumulation of the different harms when taken against the public benefit. It's their accumulation. So whilst each of them are relatively low, taken together, it's an accumulation.
Sorry, Councillor. Just one more quick question. There are two conservation areas at play, the Henley-on-Thames Conservation Area and the Remenham Henley Bridge Conservation Area. The harm is alleged for both. Limited, less than substantial harm for the Henley-on-Thames Conservation Area, moderate for Remenham Henley Bridge. Cool, excellent, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So just rewinding slightly, by reason of its scale, height, contemporary design would fail to preserve or enhance the character or appearance of the Remenham and Henley Bridge Conservation Area and the Henley-on-Thames Conservation Area. Resulted limited to moderate, less than substantial harm to these designated heritage assets, and when applying the MPPF, identified harm is not outweighed by the public benefits. Accordingly, proposal conflicts with relevant legislation in the Planning Distributed Conservation Area Act and relevant policies in the core strategy and the MDD. Second reason for refusal, amenity. The proposed development, by reason of its bulk, scale, height and proximity to neighbouring dwellings at Remenham Row, would result in an unacceptable level of overlooking and perceived loss of privacy to front elevations of those properties, together with unneighbourly overbearing impact that would materially harm living conditions of residents, therefore contrary to relevant local plan policies, MDD and SPD and MPPF. We would ask that members delegate to officers to firm up the policy reasons and this particular grammatical wording of those reasons for refusal. And also, these would be accompanied by 3 Section 106, standard Section 106 planning obligation reasons. We would also ask that members delegate to officers to agree the removal of the Section 106 reasons for refusal if a suitable unilateral or a legal agreement was completed addressing those reasons. We wouldn't need to necessarily come back to the planning committee for the Section 106 reasons. Thank you.
So if the proposer appears happy with that, Chair, then the floor is looking for a seconder, would be the position currently then.
Wayne will be the seconder. Can we then have a vote on the proposal by Sam, please? Five, 4. Anybody against? Anybody abstaining? 2 abstaining. That is then carried. Thank you. Brian, do we want to mention the last, do you want to say something about that? Just before we go. Yeah, I think this is just before, just to give an update on the.
Members will note in the supplementary update report, part 2, the decisions and updates of note, the latest major appeals performance update for December as we stand, start of December, which is this reporting period. The reporting quarter will end on the 31st of this month, end of 2025. We are currently at 6.59% for major applications. There are 2 current live appeals that are major applications. They are due to be heard February, March next year, and obviously the outcomes of those will follow in the weeks, months after February, March. So at the moment, there's no, there seems to be no possibility of those coming through in the next reporting quarter, and then we will update you into January if there is a planning committee as to where we stand moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
What are those 2, Brian?
Land north of Reading Road, 111 units north-west of Arborfield Cross, and Limmerhill Road, which is 55, or is it 66? About mid, in the 50s, which is due for a public inquiry in 2026.
So did
February.
Was the second one officer's delegation, was it? Sorry, was the second one refused by officers?
But both were refused by officers under delegated authority.
Okay.
And then I would like to mention that Craig will be his last, unfortunately, his last session with us, and we wish Craig all the best. And many thanks for all your support and help, Craig.
We were just getting used to you, Craig. Yeah, why are you leaving us?
Thanks, I appreciate the comments.
We're sad